A Brazilian Supreme Court judge has ordered the immediate suspension of the social media platform X in Brazil, meaning people there can no longer access or use it.
We are living under a new globalist tyranny. Globalism means that the affiliation of nation is secondary to sets of interests that transcend them. That's obvious. One of the reasons we're seeing nationalism on the rise across the world is because people sense that agriculture, and therefore food, is being controlled. People sense that information is being controlled. People sense that the right to gather and protest is being controlled. People sense that new CBDCs, far from freeing you up to spend money outside of corrupt institutions, will lead to further control, greater control than ever. A Trudeau-style bank-freezing wonderland is being offered. People across the world are beginning to sense that mass migration is a disruptive issue that needs to be openly addressed and referenda encouraged. Across the world, we are being confronted by one problem, but one challenge leads all others. Free speech. For with free speech, we can communicate, we can criticize, we can condemn, we can collaborate, we can form new alliances, we can look beyond the past, we can create new futures together. But once they control free speech, we're in a lot of trouble. Is this what the New York Times are referring to when they say that the American Constitution is dangerous? Now, they acknowledge it's sacred. Notice how often the word sacred is appearing in news cycles these days. The Arlington Cemetery, sacred spaces. Sacred rights, sacred values. Sacred means literally divine, connected to God. That means that there are certain virtues that are transcendent of our rights and roles as human beings, even to challenge. Now, what I would argue is one of the new emergent forces of globalism is the ability to suggest new decrees, new sacraments, new sacrosanct ideas, in order for us to sort of start accepting that maybe families are terrible and should be cast aside, in order for us to accept that the old taxonomies, the most basic natural building blocks of all, can be cast aside. We have to be invited into a state of bewilderment, and bewilderment seems to be what the carnage, this festival of delirium and idiocy that the mainstream culture propagates and pushes out. Just take one example, the Olympic opening ceremony seems designed to create. Musk says here in this post they want to undermine the Constitution. What aspect in particular of the Constitution do you imagine they're trying to undermine? Do any of you think that it's most likely free speech? Do you reckon that the right to bear arms is another constitutional right that they are likely to attack? How long before the right to pursue happiness itself is undermined? And how astonished are you that when Brazil bans X, which is in itself an extraordinary event, a free speech platform is being banned in one of the biggest countries and biggest economies in the world. This is bad enough for the people of Brazil, but I suspect it is a harbinger for future events. Imagine for a moment that a foreign country banned a corporation that had a good alliance with the Harris-Biden administration. Imagine it was an energy company or an automobile company, or a company that paid sufficient donations. Don't you imagine there will be envoys and ambassadors on their way? Don't you imagine Biden or his replacement will be fist pumping and bumping with former pariahs like they did in Saudi Arabia? Don't you imagine they'd be parachuting Nancy Pelosi in if this was about semiconductors, as they did in Taiwan, in spite of the propagation that it offered? So why is it that America and countries like the UK are so keen to benefit from Brazil's decision to ban X and to fine people up to $10,000 for using a VPN? Let's have a look at that story and see how the fiercest and most ferocious front on the war for global control is being fought today, and how this story may come to define it.
A Brazilian Supreme Court judge has ordered the immediate suspension of the social media platform X in Brazil, meaning people there can no longer access or use it. X owner Elon Musk failed to meet a deadline set by the court to name a new legal representative in the country. The Brazilian court and Musk have been at odds for months, fighting over free speech and for X allowing far-right verified accounts and misinformation on the platform. The Supreme Court says it won't bring back the platform until Musk complies with his orders and pays millions of dollars in fines. Musk was quick to react to this news, posting on the platform overnight, attacking the judge that issued the suspension.
Imagine that had happened under Bolsonaro, who was regarded as Brazil's Trump. This would be seen as a tyrannical and despotic act because it's happening under the auspices of an apparently liberal leader. They're being given a pass. Notice how even in this news report for posting far-right hate speech, they're carrying the message, the preferred message of the establishment. What's happening in Brazil now might be happening in a country near you soon. You saw similar legislation being passed, or at least attempted to be passed, in Ireland. You saw how the riots in the UK were used to facilitate similar legislation. You've seen Thierry Breton, EU gangster rapper, claiming that he will take Elon Musk down, take him down to Chinatown, let him eat at a wet market, doesn't care what diseases he gets there, and will let him cough himself Wuhan blue before he's allowed to post free speech on that platform. Now, I know a lot of you have complicated views when it comes to Elon Musk pointing out that he has billion-dollar contracts with the American government and that he's a very powerful individual, and that in his Neuralink project, to name but one thing, is to some degree participating in a transhumanist agenda that could be an existential threat to us all. But I believe in free speech. You believe in free speech. It seems that Elon Musk believes in free speech. And can any of us really imagine the freight that man must carry as he does running that site, the kind of battles that he's willing to have? You'll be aware that he's taken on legal fees of various people. So when it comes to this issue, let me know in the chat if you agree. Surely Musk is on, as they say, the right side of history. Listen, you know that we are partners with Rumble, and Rumble have gotten into the coffee game. Now, if you knew that your coffee had been tainted with pesticides and chemicals, sitting in bags for months, sitting in an old bowl bag for months, probably with traces of mold, would you drink it? The answer is, of course you wouldn't. Even Jill Biden wouldn't drink a bag so contaminated. Most of the coffee we consume is stale, flavorless, and full of harmful substances that have a negative effect on our health. Rumble's 1775 coffee, on the other hand, is free from harmful substances and chemicals, whilst it's also rich in flavor. The beans are sourced from high-altitude farms in Bolivia, roasted weekly in Miami, and delivered fresh to your doorstep. As believers in freedom, buying 1775 coffee helps fight back against other coffee makers that don't even care about you none. Join the coffee revolution and brew rebellion with Rumble's 1775 coffee. It's dark, it's delicious, but there are a variety of blends available. All you got to do is go to 1775coffee.com/brand. Use the code BRAND right now to get your 15% off. You can click that. There's stuff available whether you're in the Wake and Wonder chat or in the Rumble chat. It's pretty bloody good coffee. I'll tell you that right now. And I say that as an Englishman for whom the date 1775 is a very painful thing to reflect on. Here is Michael Schellenberger, one of the Twitter Files journalists who spent a lot of time in Brazil, who we've collaborated with on free speech issues here in the UK, and who we've spoken to at length about what's happening in Ireland, talking about the significance of events in Brazil. This is an important issue, and just because they speak Portuguese over there and they're like below the equator, we have to pay close attention to this issue, but not only because of what it could mean for nations like ours, but also because what it does mean for them. Let's have a look at Michael Schellenberger on this very subject.
The world took a giant leap forward into totalitarianism yesterday as the Brazilian government blocked X, formerly Twitter, and threatened to fine its citizens $8,900 per day if they use it. Brazil's the sixth largest nation by population in the world, and it now joins North Korea, China, and Iran in the list of countries that have banned X. It's the 12th largest economy in the world and a superpower of the global south. It doesn't matter whether or not you care about Brazil. Its totalitarianism is at risk of spreading around the world. And yet neither Joe Biden nor Vice President Kamala Harris nor anyone else in the US government has denounced the censorship. That's probably because Biden, Harris, and the Democrats all support the censorship and have been directly funding it for years. Now, of course, there is authentic demand for censorship from within Brazil, and it is ultimately up to the Brazilian people to reverse its nation's descent into totalitarianism. Brazil's powerful government-funded news media corporations have been urging censorship, in part because it benefits President Lula's ruling Workers' Party and them directly. It's now up to Senate President Rodrigo Pacheco to impeach the Supreme Court Justice turned dictator, Alexandre de Moraes. At the same time, the Biden administration and Democrats have played an influential role in instigating the censorship in Brazil. The FBI went to Brazil and gave its Supreme Court justices advice on how to censor its population. The U.S. government has been funding many of the NGOs in Brazil that have been demanding censorship since the election of a populist president there in 2018. And when I testified before Congress in May of this year, the Democrats on the committee and their witness all defended Brazil's censorship. And Pacheco yesterday affirmed his support for Moraes. The U.S. government, after the election of the populist President Jair Bolsonaro in 2018, funded these pro-censorship organizations which have been demanding censorship. Moraes yesterday openly defended censorship to prevent extremist populist groups from coming to power. As United States Federal Communications Commissioner Brendan Carr noted yesterday, that's a direct violation of the Brazilian Constitution, which explicitly protects political speech. As such, the totalitarian takeover of Brazil is a model for what the Democrats and the legacy news media want for the whole world. Pro-censorship scholars at Stanford and Harvard, Democrats in Congress, and the U.S. news media have long recognized that the First Amendment is an obstacle to their plans. And so they have supported censorship efforts by nations around the world with weaker free speech protections, like Brazil, Britain, Australia, and the European Union. They're looking for them to censor and even block X. We need to grow our global free speech movement because if we don't stop the spread of totalitarianism over there, it will make it harder for us to stop it over here.
2 weeks to stop the spread. That's my message. We've just got to flatten the curve of censorship. It'll all be worth it. It'll all be over by Christmas. It's becoming increasingly plain that what global authoritarianism will offer us is citizen management so entrenched, insidious, and all-consuming that the world will be like a banalized and anodyne airport. Checks at every step, social credit scores wherever we go, currencies that are centrally controlled. Do you envisage a dystopian moment where at the flick of a switch, all of the cameras that we've willingly installed in our cars and homes flick on to surveil us, where all of our electronic vehicles that may prevent us buffering and changing lanes to spontaneously direct us to stations to be checked in? Are we beginning to sense that the pandemic period was indeed a pilot of a kind to test just how subordinate and easily subjugated we could be if fear was heightened to the level of a near dark ecstasy? This is an opportunity for us to use these tools of communication to make connection, but there's a very arcane component to this too. We have to look at ourselves and within ourselves and be willing to move aside from, away from, and beyond simple hatred. Can you find in yourself, I am searching inside myself for the power to move beyond selfishness and self-interest and vanity? Can you find within yourself the power to confront what seems like something that is insurmountable, a global system of bureaucracy designed to shut you down and control you? But there is a reason to be cheerful because there is disruption. There is a resurgent interest in spirituality. There are political movements that are by their nature now coalitions of independent thinkers. Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy joining the MAGA movement, making it somewhat Maha with Bobby Kennedy and maybe somewhat Mahalo because she's Hawaiian, isn't she, in some sort of way? Tulsi, is that part of her deal? I'm not sure. I've not done all of the research, but it sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds right, doesn't it? If we're starting to see new alliances. Now, me personally, I don't believe centralized institutional systemic politics that is to any degree funded by big pharma and big food and big energy and big military can bring about the level of freedom that we're capable of achieving if we become truly awakened and enlightened together. But it's an important bulwark. It's an important moment of opposition and change. And I strongly believe that if we don't take the opportunity to impose these centralized and centralizing bureaucratic authoritarian forces that tell you that they're here to care for you and to protect you from baddies like Bolsonaro and Trump and whatever boogeyman exists in your country, if we are willing to be cowed and cower as a result of their nightmare propaganda, we may not yet ever know freedom, but I believe that this could be a time of great, great opposition, that we could come together, that there could be new alliances, and it could emerge from interesting and surprising places. And with the collapse of the dollar and the emergence of BRICS, and with more and more interesting cryptocurrencies, surely there are parallel ideas awaiting to awaken. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Remember, like and subscribe and get into those comments and participate in this conversation. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.